Hi, guys. I am Sharon Tillman here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of A Journey to Identity. So, on last week's podcast, we were able to just kind of walk through a little bit of my journey, a little bit of me telling you about my childhood and a lot of the things that I had gone through, a lot of the things that I had experienced. Um, Leaving off last week, I think the last thing that I kind of left you with was talking about my feelings and my thoughts upon finding out that my family did not believe that I was my dad's child, and how that really did, was the shaping to the identity. It was the shaping to the world that I was living in. And so I left you guys with the question to stop and ask yourself, where are you shrinking? Where are you not being able to be your authentic self because you are not allowing yourself to live in that truth because you feel as if your truth is not enough. I kind of left you with that last week. And so I'm hoping that in leaving you with that, you were able to stop and really think about that. You were able to stop and really think about your own life, and you were able to think about your own journey, and you were able to think about areas and moments of your life where you've done it or where you're currently still doing it. So I just want to continue to take you on this journey with me. And as I'm taking you on this journey, I'm hoping that this journey will just continue to affect your own journey. It will open up your eyes, it would broaden your horizons when it comes to the lenses in which you see yourself, and the lens in which you see the identity and the journey that you are currently walking on. So as I just kind of continue where I was from last week, yeah, it was heavy for me. And so I remember, leaving that particular area of my life and just wondering, I used to wonder all the time, like, where am I supposed to be? Who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to show up? Like, what is it that you're calling me to do? Like, is there some value? Is there some purpose to me? Is there some value? Is there some purpose to my life? And I know that I'm not the only one who feels that way. I'm not the only one who's ever thought that. And can I just be really honest with you? There are moments in your life when, even when you go through your journey and you continue on your journey because it is a journey for a reason, but there are moments in your life when you still may ask yourself that question. I have another encounter later on in my journey where I had to stop and ask myself that all over again, knowing all of the things that God has done. And so we have to be careful not to find ourselves like the children of Israel, wondering, right? Going backwards and forgetting about the things that God has done. So I just want to continue to take you on. As I entered into another phase of my life, I'm going through high school, and I'm dating someone in high school, kind of off and on. It was like I met my ex-husband in high school, and I want to reference him as John so I don't have to keep saying ex-husband, but we're going to give him a name, right? His name is not John, but we're going to give him a name, and his name is going to be John. So I met John in high school, and we kind of dated on and off. It was kind of weird how we even kind of got to know each other. He came and played at my church when I was younger. We had like a choir anniversary. I don't even know if churches still do that nowadays. But back in that day, we had something called a choir anniversary, and he was the hired musician for our choir anniversary. So I kind of met him that way. And it's weird because one of my cousins is like a cousin, or like a, kind of pulled in cousin of his. It's like whenever you have family you have people that's always around and you kind of claim them as family even when they're not. One of my cousins was like that for him. So for a minute, I was like, oh, we're probably cousins because clearly I'm kin to everybody that they're kin to, right? So I was in my brain thinking like, oh, we might be cousins. And then this kind of weird bond like for him just kind of came over. And it was kind of weird, I say, because it was almost like, ill, you like your cousin, right? But then when I found out that he wasn't really my cousin, I was like, okay, like maybe it's not so weird, right? So I remember just liking him. I remember just like, okay. And so we had this weird kind of like relationship going on where we talked on the phone all the time. We would get together in school every now and again, but not really because it wasn't really like an out loud kind of thing, which I can definitely go deeper into that. Um and it wasn't like a thing where it was like everybody knew, right? It wasn't like anything like, oh yeah, I'm dating John. Oh yeah, John is dating Sharon. It wasn't that kind of relationship. It was kind of like off and on. He was 2 years older than me, so he went to prom first, and I did not get asked to his prom. He went to prom with someone else, and that was okay. It was okay. I didn't feel a type of way about it because I still talk to other people too, which is why it was kind of on and off, not out loud. Because he still talked to other people, I still talk to other people, but we also knew that we talked to each other, and we really did enjoy conversation with each other. I think it was a space where with each other we were both able to just be who we were. When we were with other people, we both felt like we had to become something or facade something or mimic or mask something. And so I think that our whole existence of even being in a relationship was kind of like a trauma bond before we even knew what trauma bonds were. It was literally like, I'm so comfortable with you because I get to just be Sharon. And John is like, I'm comfortable with you because I can just be John. But when I'm with other people, I don't get to be this version of John, or I don't get to be this version of Sharon. And so, of course, I'm always going to pawn that question anytime I'm talking about something. Like, think about moments in your life where you feel like you have to become a few different identities depending on who you're with. When I'm with this person, this is how I get to show up. But when I'm with this person, I have to show up a different way. And I want you to really think about that. Like, how healthy is it for you to have to mask who you are to be around certain people? And then I want you to think about that space in you that makes you feel like that being yourself is not enough. Like, we always have to go back to that. And in all honesty, a lot of the things you're probably going to hear me say over and over and over again, because it's the reality of how we feel about ourselves. This is what shapes our world. This is how we get our perspectives. This is how we show up. How do we see ourselves? How do we feel about ourselves? And those moments in our life when we have friends that we feel like, I don't get to be myself with this person because I don't know if this person can handle, or I don't know if this person will accept me here. So I want you to really think about that as I'm telling my story and as I'm sharing my journey with you. I really want you to think about that. And I want you to think about how it makes you show up. How do you show up when you're with other people? How do you feel like, or do you feel like, I've got a friend that I can just be sharing with, but then when I'm with her or when I'm with him, I can't be that vulnerable. I can't be that open. I can't just be who I am because I don't feel like it would be accepted. So I want you to think about that. But moving forward, I think that was one thing that really cultivated our connection together. And so, of course, he would do his thing and I would do mine. And so when he got out of high school, he left and went to college, and we stayed connected and we stayed together and we still talked all the time, wrote each other letters back and forth. Anytime he was in town, he would come see me. And so it was like we had this really, like we had this kind of relationship going on to where, I felt like it was something for me. It was something major because it was more than I had ever had with anybody, in the sense of I felt like I was seen. And so in spite of what anybody says, everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to feel heard, and everybody wants to feel validated. If not all three, at some particular point in your life, you want to feel those. And so with John, I felt seen. I felt like, oh my goodness, like I'm totally important to him. And so we would date on and off, still kind of, in our own weird way. I went to my high school prom and I didn't take John either. That's how on and off, on again and off again. It was really weird. But then after I got out of high school, I had my intentions on going to college, and John and I got really serious. And so I remember, just letting John know, like, yeah, I'm going to college, because at this point, John had come back. He wasn't away at school anymore. He had come back. So he was in the area, and we would see each other often, like almost every day, a couple of times a week. And so John and I were serious. And I remember telling him, like, I'm going to college and I'm going to leave. And in his mind, he was like, there's no way we're going to be able to be together. Now, the 18-year-old version of me never thought to say, well, you did not go to college whenever I was feeling like, oh my goodness. Now, granted, we've gotten more history from then until then, the time gap, but I didn't think about it like, is this a sabotage? Is this a setup? Like, I'm gonna go to college and make something of myself. I owe that to myself, right? But he's pouring out his love to me. And at that point, nobody had never done that for me. Nobody had never, not even anybody in my family, had ever just let me know how much I was loved and appreciated. And I felt so hard for this guy. Like, I felt so hard for John, because I wasn't used to love. And so for me, as I said before in my last episode, love was very transactional. I always felt like I had to work for it. It was never freely given. So for someone to freely give me love, it was just like, oh my goodness, like, I'm not working for this. Like, this is what this feels like. And I was working for it. I just didn't know it. But in my mind, when we're not exposed to the right things, then we will take whatever version of it we can, even if it's unhealthy. We take the unhealthy version of it, and we will accept it, and we'll feel like it's good for us, even if it's not. So I just remember like feeling like, oh my God, this guy really loves me and he's pouring out his heart to me. Now, I still had every intention to go to school. Let me be very clear. My parents didn't go to college. We didn't have a lot of people who, graduated from high school and then college and really just made something of themselves in their career paths and things of that nature. So I definitely wanted to do that. Financially, I struggled a lot when I was in high school, a lot of instability. And I didn't want that. Like, I wanted to feel like, I've got this thing on lock. Like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get a good job and I'm going to make some good money, because these are the dreams and stuff that we have for ourselves. And just giving myself permission to dream, knowing where I came from, was major for me. At one point, feeling hopeless, I felt like that was my way out, right? That was my way out. That was my way to feeling like, okay, if nothing else in my life matters, and if I'm not that important, I'm going to make myself important. I'm going to make the value of me. So I just remember like, preparing for school and all of the things. And then I get pregnant. Now, I'm not saying John trapped me. I'm not saying that at all. So be careful. Okay. But what I am saying is the enemy knew that I had issues with my parents, that I didn't want to be a mother like that, or you know what I'm saying? Like, so I knew that in getting pregnant, if I didn't want to be my mom, I couldn't go to school. I just couldn't. Like, there is no way. And John was great. I felt like his family was great. They would have taken great care of my child without question. I wouldn't have to worry in that sense, but it still wouldn't have been me raising him and me being able to raise him and be the mother to him that I didn't have growing up. And I really wanted that. When I was younger, all I used to say was, I don't want to be like my mom. My mom had 4 kids. We all had different dads. My mom wasn't married to any of them. And I felt like if we had more stability in our home, if there was more of a foundation, then maybe things would have been different for me. That's what I always said to myself. And so I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to get married first, and I'm going to have my kids the right way. I'm going to do it the right way, because if I do it the right way, clearly it's going to work out. But this is when we go to make our own plans. We make our own plans for ourselves, and we don't include God. Like, what? God who? Like, what? No. Like, God, clearly you didn't include me in the plans of me being rejected and abandoned by my parents. So, like, we decide that if that was the plan, then I don't want that plan, and I'm going to do something different. And so that was me. I decided I'm going to do it the right way, because if I do it the right way, it has to work. It has to be right. There's no other way, right? Wrong. So when I got pregnant, I knew that there's no way I could leave my son. I knew it. And going through that pregnancy with my son was the hardest thing ever. It was very hard for me because John's family was very religious. And so, of course, me getting pregnant out of wedlock was a major deal. I was asked to leave his church and to never come back while I was pregnant because I was such a bad influence on the kids. Well, John was never sat down. And I've heard so many people tell this story before. Like, it's so funny because I've been in circles before where we've talked about this. And everybody who has gotten pregnant by a musician say the same thing. I was sat down, but he was not. I was asked to leave, but he was not. And so I don't know if it's because we carry the child and we have to stand up and our bodies start to shape and look different and we're carrying this baby on the inside and everyone knows that we're unmarried. I don't know what the thought process is whenever the decision is made. But for most of the people, if not all of the people that I've ever had conversation with, this was their journey. And so I was asked to leave the church. I was asked to not come back while pregnant. I was asked, to, not be a bad influence on the kids. And so that was really hard for me because I'm not only feeling rejected, I'm feeling rejected by John's family at this point. This is a major thing for me. It's taking me back to the place that I thought that I had buried within. Because when we never face the things that we're dealing with, we don't get rid of them. We just kind of suppress them. It's almost like when people use alcohol and drugs, it's like a dopamine feeling, right? You go up, you get high. And for that moment or for that hour or however long you do it, everything that you're dealing with, everything that you're facing, it goes away. It's a non-existent. You no longer feel the pain. You no longer feel the pressure. You're no longer dealing or facing whatever it is that you were dealing or facing before. But whenever the high comes down or whenever the soberness takes place, it's back. And so what do? We're always trying to go back to that feeling. And so we keep doing it and we keep doing it and we keep doing it because we don't want to face and we don't want to deal with the things that we have in front of us. And so that is how abandonment and rejection shows up. It's not something that you just get to suppress. We can suppress it when things look good, but there's always something that's going to make it come back up. Let me go a step further with that. I want you to know that even when you do face abandonment and rejection, when you deal with it, and you acknowledge it and you identify it being a part of your life in that moment, you still are going to have places in your life where you feel triggered with abandonment or you feel triggered with rejection because that's something that you've dealt with. But that is almost like the temptation, right? So the Bible talks about temptation, how Jesus was tempted, right? It never said that temptation was the sin. The act of the temptation is the sin. So I want you to know that it's still going to come. There are going to be moments where it's still going to come into your face, like it's going to try to take you back to that place. But you have to bring your mind and your thought up under subjection. No, I've dealt with this. I'm not this is not a rejection move, or this is not an abandonment move. Clearly I just wasn't right for this, or clearly they just made a different choice. I'm not rejected. I'm just not the choice, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not a good choice. It just means that I'm not their choice, and that is okay. It's really reshaping the way that you think. It's changing your perspective, because those moments are always going to come. And we have to be very careful not to take those particular moments and think, because those moments are here, I haven't done the work. Maybe I am not good enough. Maybe what I thought that I was becoming, I'm really not. That's a plague of the enemy. The enemy is trying to plague your mind to make you feel like that you're not something, that you're not worthy, that maybe you thought that you were getting better, but you're really not. And so I just want you to, and I felt this heavy here to insert this, so I just wanted to insert it. But we have to be careful even in the way that we think, because the mind really is the place where the enemy will start. If he can get it within your thought process, he has the ability to make you feel it in every other area of your body, right? So, I just remember wanting something different. And I'm like, clearly, I'm going to be something different. I'm going to do something different. So going through that whole experience of pregnancy, it was very hard. I feel like I cried so much, because there was one point where I felt like John's family moved away from the town that we lived in. So we were no longer close. He moved at least 30 minutes away. I didn't have a car. At the time, John's car was messed up, so he was operating off his mom's car. And it was just so many different things. I felt like they were trying to keep us away. And that was hard for the rejection that I had buried but never dealt with, right? I never dealt with it. So it was hard for me. And I even remember John telling me, like, his mom was like, you don't have to marry her because you got her pregnant. And I was happy that he told me that, because I wouldn't have known had he not told me. But then I was saddened, because I was just like, wow, like, this is how, like, I don't know a lot about God, right? Let me run that story just a little bit. So growing up with my mom, when I was with my mom wasn't a churchgoer. So I didn't get that from her. We have a grandmother who adopted our family. And because I believe that the abandonment generations in my family started way before me. My mom was abandoned. I'm not sure about her mom, but I know that her mom's mom passed when she was younger. And so that was an abandonment for her. So I just want you to know that a lot of times, and I've heard people say it, I don't know if it's biblical or if it's something that people just say, but I've heard people say that sometimes we are literally not carrying our stuff, but we're carrying stuff of generations before us. Well, here's the thing. Whenever you're evaluating where you are and you're evaluating your journey and what you've gone through, just go back and to do a little history to see how far back this thing resides. Are you the one that's going to break it, or are you the one that's going to carry it on to the next generation? Abandonment was a generational thing. So my grandmother adopted my family on my mom's side, and she was a pastor. And so I was able to go to church with her. I was able to learn of God through her. And that was my very first exposure to church. It was my very first exposure. My grandma had a home church. She was a pastor, so I got to participate in things at her church. She also had a home church that we visited a lot. I got saved at that church at least 5 times because in my mind, I was thinking like, oh, I think it wore off. I got to get saved again. Like, is that not... Like, we get to the point where we're like, oh, I don't feel saved. Like, I think I need to get saved again because I think it wore off. Like, it's almost like the perm that didn't take, right? So at least 5 times I got saved at my grandma's home church. But that was my first exposure to God. I didn't know a lot about him. And so I love my grandmother. I love her. I love her with everything. And she's no longer with me. She lived to be about 98. Come on, good genes. I love that. And I have another great grandma who's like 97. She literally just turned 97 this month. And so I'm so grateful for longevity that surrounds me. Thank you, Lord. But with my grandmother, she would expose me to the God. I was exposed to her version of God, right? So it was like, you're not allowed to ask God questions. You're not allowed to question him. You're not allowed to this or that. Like, it wasn't real relationship what I was exposed to with God. It was more like the fear of God is not out of reverence. The fear of God is out of fear. If you don't live right, you better be scared because you're going to die and go to hell. Like, it was just so brutal in that sense to where it was like you were afraid more. You were almost like forced into a relationship with him, not really wanting it, right? It was just like, okay, I don't want to die. Like, my grandma would say things to me like, kissing is a sin. If it's fun, you sinning. And I used to be like, I just don't know if I want to be saved. Like, I just don't know if I want to do this because it's like, this has got to be the most boring life ever. Like, what kind of life is this, right? But this was the version of God that I was exposed to. I loved him, and I used to sing this song all the time at my grandma's church, and it used to be like, I have a father who cares. I may not be able to tell the winds when to blow or the stars to shine in my command, but there's one constellation that I want you to know, and that is, I have a father who cares. I used to sing that song so much growing up. I had no idea what God was even doing on the inside of me at that moment in my life. All I know is this song used to bring me to tears. And in my mind, I used to be like, but I don't have a father. My dad is in prison. I don't even know if he's my dad for real because I didn't get the paternity test with my dad until I was 21 years old when I saw my dad coming from prison. So at this point, I'm like, I don't even know if he is my dad. I don't know if he is or not, but that was the version of God that I was exposed to. That's all that I knew. So whenever I'm going through the situation with John and with John's family, all I could think of was like, wow, God, this is like, I don't even know if I want to be a part of this, if this is how people have to treat people, because I don't like the way this makes me feel. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like, God, I don't like it. Like, I don't like it. And I don't even know if I'm supposed to tell you that. And technically, I'm not even supposed to bring things like this to you. But I don't like it. So I don't know if I want to be a part of something like this. And I believe that it was moments like that that was like letting God know, like, yeah, she's the one. Because technically God knows, right? He has a plan and a purpose for us even before putting us in our mother's womb. Jeremiah 1:5. You're always going to hear me quote that scripture. That is one of the scriptures that literally changed my life, because in the moment when I feel the most unworthy, in the moment where I felt like a mistake, in the moment where I felt like I had nobody and nothing and there was no belonging for me, God was letting me know, hey, listen, Sharon, before I put you in your mother's womb, before your mother even knew that they were going to come together and conceive you at such a young age, I already had a plan and a purpose for your life. There was something that I already knew that I wanted you to do in the earth realm, and I had already cultivated you with all of the things that you need. Everything that we need to fulfill the purpose of God, the plan of God that he places inside of us before we're even born, we're born with it. That is 2 Peter 1:3. We are born with it, everything. And so the stories, the journey, the ups, the downs, the valleys, the trials, the tribulations, the abandonment, the rejection, the abuse or molestation, because everybody has a different journey. Whatever it is for you, I want you to know that it is the very thing that cultivates and develops the character of Christ in you for him to be able to do exactly what it is that he purposed you to do. I just had to insert that because I want to encourage you. I want you to know that in spite of what you've gone through, in spite of what your background was, in spite of what your upbringing was, there is something that God wants to do with you. There is a plan and a purpose for your life. You are important to him. And you were important no matter what you are to your parents. You are important to the Father, and that is what matters. I have to encourage you there. I felt that. And so in that moment, I felt like I needed to let you know that. And so going through that, particular situation, it was hard for me, but I endured it. I didn't give up. I had this white picket fence picture in my brain, and I'm like, I'm going to get this picture. Like, I done messed up. I've gotten pregnant before getting married, and I was so sad about that. I really was. But I was so determined that all my children would have the same dad and that I was going to marry this man anyway. I was so determined that I was still going to get this story that I was like, I am going to do what I have to do to make sure that this happens. Because God, even though I made a mistake by getting pregnant, I believe that your grace is sufficient. Now, I don't understand grace to the extent of the way that God displays it. I don't really understand it. And a lot of times we hear people say things and we don't have a real clear understanding for what it is that they're saying. A lot of times because we haven't gotten our Bibles, we haven't really developed or cultivated real relationship with him. And so we're just talking based off what people say. And I used to hear people say all the time that God's grace was sufficient. And I was like, God, your grace is sufficient. You will forgive me for this. Like, I believe that. And so I was determined. Like, no, I stayed with John. We had our son. We stayed in relationship together. We did not live together because his family was super religious and they didn't believe in it. And John was a people pleaser in the sense of his family. He felt like he had to do what they wanted him to do. And I feel empathy and compassion for him, even to this day. Even though we're divorced and all of the things, I still feel empathy and compassion for him because I feel like there is something on the inside of him that God wanted to really cultivate as far as to shape his identity in who God wanted him to be and not necessarily who his parents wanted him to be. And so even as a mother, we have to be careful, right? Even as a mother, I say it all the time, and then I'm going to jump back in my story. But even as a mother, I say it all the time. Like, I thank you for allowing me to steward my children. I have three amazing children, guys. Like, and when I say amazing, I say amazing. Like, you know how people be out here bragging and boasting? Like, I am bragging and boasting on my kids because they are a bum for real. Like, they are doing great. They're not perfect. They make mistakes. They don't get it right all the time. But when I say they love for real. They love God. They understand. Like, they're great kids. They're great kids with great character. Okay. Enough about them babies, right? But I always say, God, I thank you for allowing me to steward them here on this earth, but they don't belong to me. They absolutely belong to you. And I had to do that because I didn't want to be the shield. I didn't want to be that barrier that hindered them from being who their creator called them to be. It's not about me. It's not about who I see them as. It's not about who I want them to be. It's not about that. It is literally about God developing who he created them to be before putting them in my womb. Because just like he had a plan and a purpose for me, he had a plan and a purpose for them. And they really belong to him. And so as a mother, especially as a single mother, I always want to be very, very intentional about making sure that I am not projecting what I want on them, and they're looking at me, or they're putting their focus, or their attention on me and what I'm saying, more so over what God is saying and who God has called them to be and what God is doing in their life, right? And I can even remember a time in my life where my John is a music guy, and music is his life. It's always been his life. It was his life before we got married. It was his life while married, and it's his life while divorced. And there was a moment where my son wanted to do music, and I was like, "Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, no, this is not the life for you. No, absolutely not." And I battled with that thing because although I could see all of the things, I can see all of John's experiences with music and what it looked like, not necessarily from the outside looking in, because I'm technically on the inside once we're married and all of the things, but I could see all of this, and I didn't want that for my son. I didn't like who John was becoming, and I didn't want my son to become that. But it wasn't up to me. And so there was a moment where I really tried to block it. And I think the more that I tried to block it, the more he gravitated to his dad, and the more he gravitated to the thing that I was trying to block. And so that's another lesson in itself. We have to be very, very careful, because we'll easily want to block something. But if we're blocking something, whether God did it, whether God is saying, this is what I have for you or not, we could be pushing them into something that clearly God is not saying for them, simply because we're forcing them to rebel against it. I just wanted to insert that there also. But I remember like that, just having that, having that place, being in that place, being in that moment. And like, I'm still going to get this picture. I'm still going to get my marriage. I'm still going to have all my kids are going to have the same dad. All my kids are going to have the same last name. Like this. And I think I focused so much on that I was literally turning a blind eye to all of the other things that could have been clear red flags. No gray intended, like clearly, right? So I remember just going through that, and I remember, really starting to, after I had my son, I really started to pray a little, and I was just like, really trying to get to know this God, right? Like it sounds funny saying it now, because like I have a love for him that is beyond measure. But I can remember when I didn't. I can remember when I didn't have a love for him like that. I can remember loving God because I felt like I was supposed to love him, but not loving him because it was a genuine thing in my heart. I can remember going to church because it was a religious thing to do. And they say you're supposed to go to church every Sunday, but I didn't get up and go to church because I was going for something. I was getting up to go because it was the right thing to do. So when it came time for me to get to know him, I remember what that felt like. I remember starting to read my Bible and starting to talk to him, and I could feel something happening. I could feel it. I could feel something happening. And even before John and I got married, I could feel something happening to where, like, I didn't want to fornicate anymore. I didn't want to have sex anymore outside of marriage. And it was so weird because John was like, "What do you mean? We've always done this," hence the kid over there. But it was something happening and I didn't want to do it anymore. I no longer wanted to do it. And so I knew that something was happening and I couldn't explain it. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't even have anybody that I felt like I could explain it to, because John's mom and I's relationship was so up and down. I mean, like, clearly from beginning to the end. Okay? It was so up and down. I didn't have a safe space in her. And so one thing that I know as I've, gotten into therapy and, all of the things, one thing I know for sure is that when we don't feel safe, when we don't feel protected, right? Safety is a basic need for us. And when we don't feel safety, when we don't feel protected, we can't rely there. We can't give ourselves there. We're too afraid to let our guards down there. And that is what that was for me. I couldn't let my guard down. I was too afraid to do that with her. And so for years and years, and I mean, like, clearly John and I were married for about 15 years, and we were together about 5 prior to getting married. So we had about 20 years in the game. 20 years. It was literally half of my teens, all of my 20s, half of my 30s. Okay? Yeah. Just to give you a clear picture on where we are. But I didn't have that with her. And so I was trying to figure out this God thing all on my own at one point. And so I remember just going through different things with John. And clearly there was just like, okay, Sharon, just look at this. Is this what you want? And it was different things. It wasn't major things every time, but there were moments when there were major things that it was just like, you're standing at a crossroad, right? This is how I felt. You're standing at a crossroad, and it's like, what life is like before John. You were lonely. You didn't have a sense of belonging. Like, John represented all of the things that I longed for. I longed for companionship because I needed to feel loved. I longed for family because I didn't have that. I didn't have family. So John came with a big family, and I longed for that. So when I'm standing at this crossroad and I'm thinking about all of the things that I didn't have, and I'm like, if you stay with John, you have all of these things, but then there's this. But if you don't stay with John, then you go back to the way things were. And now it's not just you, it's you and your kid. What do you do with that? And because I got a taste of what I thought was the good life, right? Feeling not necessarily complete, but feeling satisfied in the good outweighing the bad, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so when we got married, it was a lot. It was a lot from It was a lot from engagement leading up to marriage. It was a lot. Half of John's family didn't even attend our wedding. It was a lot. It was almost like they were really trying to force me out for so long. But I was so determined to get my white picket fence family that I was just like, clearly, you don't know the goal, because the goal is this. This is what I want. I'm going to get it. Right. And it's like the mindset behind the reasoning, the why behind the motivation of what we're even doing. We have to stop and ask ourselves, why are we fighting so hard for a thing? Why? Is it because a lot of times, and one of the ministers at our church, she talked about not having a substitution, and it was so good, just in like one of the Bible studies based off of the book that we're reading, which is Psalms 23, like the 23rd Psalms. And it was so good because it was just like, how many times are we trying to substitute one thing for another? Like, we think that we're doing something good, but the reality is our hearts are not really pure behind why we're doing it. We help a homeless man on the street, but we're helping the homeless man so that we can take a picture and show people that we're helping the homeless man. We're not helping the homeless man because our heart was really in the right place when we were doing it. So we're doing these things on the outside, but on the inside, it's corrupt. Right? And so my corruption was my reasoning why. Why am I doing this? I'm not doing this for this reason. I'm doing this because in my mind, I don't want to be my mother. I don't want to end up like my mom. I don't want to be single with kids and then have to keep having kids by different people and never get married and never get exposed to a different life. I didn't want that for me. And I when I tell this story, like when I get to go and speak at different places, I always say that I was trying to not be somebody that I didn't even know. I didn't even know her. I didn't even know her reasoning for some of the choices that she made. I didn't understand what she had to go through or why she had to make some of the decisions that she made. I was just clear on I didn't want that for my life. And so I was choosing to not be like someone that I didn't even get to know. And that was my focus in that moment. That was my focus. So even in going through my marriage, I went through so many different things, from infidelity to abandonment to rejection to abuse, but not a physical abuse, but more of a verbal abuse. A verbal abuse from John's family, right? So a lot of times it wasn't even necessarily what John was saying. It was what John wasn't saying. I wasn't protected. I wasn't protected by John when it came to his family. And it showed. So we went to marriage counseling, and we went to marriage counseling a couple of different times, but there was one particular time we went to marriage counseling. And the counselor said to him, he said, it's almost like there's a gunfight outside. And instead of you walking out in front of your wife and you taking the darts, you put her in front of you so that she feels them all. You're not protecting her. She's not protected. And it resonated with me so much because in that moment, I felt seen. I felt understood. Like somebody understands me. Somebody clearly understands how I feel. And because I've never felt protected, and that goes all the way back to my dad not even protecting me. I've never felt protected. So clearly we really do get into relationships with what we're exposed to. Because I married someone who clearly wasn't protecting me, knowing that protection was something that I longed for because I never had it. I never had it. I never knew what it felt like to be protected. But marriage counseling also changed my life Because at that moment, I stopped focusing so much on the white picket fence and the marriage, and I started to focus on me. Like, Sharon, who are you? And when I stopped and asked myself that question, I couldn't answer it. I had no idea who I was, because all I knew is that I was a wife. I was John's wife. When I first got married, it sounds so funny. I love to tell this because I believe that it resonates with a lot of people, even if they don't say it, right? My identity was a non-existent for me when I got married. So when I got married, I took on the identity of wife. I became John's wife. That's who I was. So it was like, oh, there's John's wife. Hi, John wife. And it's so funny because some of John's friends, I think at one time they would forget my name, but they knew the excitement that I had about being John's wife. And so they'd be like, hey, John's wife. And I would just smile from ear to ear because I'm so excited to have an identity. I'm so excited to feel like I finally got a place. I finally know what it feels like to belong somewhere. I belong here, and I finally know what that feels like. So how often, right? How often have you found yourself in a space where clearly you know that I don't know who I am? How often have you stopped and just asked yourself, who are you? Take away your titles. Take away the things that you do and tell me who you are to the core. Who are you? I never even knew that that was the hardest question that I would ever have to answer in my life, because clearly I had no idea. I had no idea. And I think that God knew, of course God knew, right? I don't even have to say I think, because I know he does. He knows all of the things. And so God knows that even in taking that step, taking that road and choosing to go in that direction, God knew that I needed something to build off of. I needed something to build off of. And when I took on the identity of wife, God started doing things in me that I can't even explain. Clearly, it was like, okay, now that she has a foundation that she feels like is strong enough to hold her, now I can start working on all of the other things that need work. And that is what he did. And I mean, he did it in such a way that, oh my goodness, that'll definitely be for the next podcast. So I'll pick up here. But I just want you to stop and think about your journey. This is always something to make you think. I love telling my story. I don't tell my story for likes or for comments or for people to pity me, because I don't need any pity or empathy. I don't tell my story for emotion or for people to feel sad. I tell my story because I want it to be a catalyst for you and your journey. I want you to evaluate your own journey and where you are in your life, and evaluate the things that you've gone through and or still going through. And I want you to see how God is intricately moving on you, what his plan and purpose is for you, and how your current identity is shaped by the journey that you are walking. And that could be positively or negatively. But I want you to know that it affects your identity. It affects how you do life. It affects how you do relationships. It affects how you do things with other people. Like, everything plays off of another. And so I want you to be encouraged in that. And I want you to stop and evaluate that. And I want you to ask God, like, God, what is my identity? Who am I? Who have you called and purposed me to be? What is the plan and purpose that you have for me in my mother's womb, even before creating me? What is it that you see me doing here on this earth? Because one thing that I know for sure, and two things that I know for certain, is there is not one person on this earth that's like you. So if you choose to not show up and be who you've called to be, then the world misses out. And you miss out on the opportunity to be the genuine, authentic person that God has called you to be, just as you are. You miss an opportunity to do that. You miss an opportunity to be that if you don't walk effectively, boldly, and confidently in the calling that your Father has for you. Listen, thank you guys so much again for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And I hope that as you are on this journey with me, that it piques your own journey and helps you to walk into the identity that God has for you. I am Sharon Tillman. Until next time, I love you guys for real. Have an amazing day.